Made his debut in F1 back in 2000 at the age of 20, became the playboy of F1, won his first race in 2006, won his one and only championship in a fairy tale season with Braun, moved to McLaren and endured their left in 2016 only to come back for one race in 2017, and now has to put up with one of the worst pundits known to man. Who am I kidding? Jenson Button's motorsport career deserves a lot more than that, but how good was the man who failed his driving test at 17? Like any other driver, Jenson worked his way through the junior formulas. He was tipped as one to look out for as he became the youngest and first British driver to win the European Super A Championship in 1997. The European Super A Championship was part of 4 major karting championships that took place in Europe, by the way. Other notable winners would include Lewis and Max, so you could see why people were excited by Jenson. He had gained a reputation of being a very strong wet weather racer, as his father made him race with slick tyres on a wet track, hoping he would learn good car control, which also led to Button having a smooth driving style, being one of the smoothest driving styles in F1 history. I mean, just compare his handling to Alonso's. Button's big breakthrough into single-seaters came about through the British Formula Ford series, which he duly won comfortably, winning 9 out of the 10 races. A good start to a junior career, some would say. After this success, he got a move to British Formula 3, seen as the second final hurdle before a driver enters Formula 1. By far the youngest on the grid that year, it was going to be a tough season for Button, especially considering he was driving in an underpowered Renault Dallara F399 car, while many of his competitors were driving with the superior Mugen Honda engine. He did, however, prevail, winning 3 races, finishing as the top rookie and 3rd overall, in a grid that sadly I know very little about. Wait, is that? He also came second in the prestigious Macau Grand Prix, and then got the opportunity to test for McLaren in Silverstone and for Prost in Barcelona, both so impressed by the teenager that they both offered him drives as test driver. Jaguar followed suit and offered the young talent a full seat, but when Alessandro Zanardi departed Williams for kart during the off-season, Button got the call and became the new driver at Williams. It was such a shock move that Button didn't even hold a super license at that point. It was the equivalent of Max skipping out F2 and going straight into F1. He did deserve it, unlike others. In 2000, Williams were off the back of 3 poor uncharacteristic seasons, but they had partnered up with German giants BMW for the new millennium, hoping to change their fortunes. Jenson partnered Michael Schumacher's very talented brother Ralph, and Button's start to F1 life was respectable enough. A 6th place finish at the season's 2nd race in Brazil saw him become the youngest driver to score a point in F1 at that time. He also fared pretty well against Ralph, as in his first 6 races he out-qualified the German twice and was consistently close to his pace. However, Williams had become very interested in signing the very highly rated Juan Pablo Montoya from IndyCar. A dip in Button's form midway through the season, combined with Montoya's win in the Indy 500, led to Montoya being announced as Jenson's replacement for 2001. His most impressive performance in his rookie season was his qualifying performance at Spa, qualifying a very impressive 3rd, beating his teammate and placing 1 place ahead of the greatest driver to grace F1. Unfortunately, he had a clumsy race, running wide at the bus stop chicane on lap 4, losing a position to Schumacher and causing a collision with Jarno Trulli, which retired the Italian and saw Jenson lose a further 2 places. By the final race, Button finished the season in 8th position in the Drivers' Championship with 12 points, half of what his teammate accumulated, so Williams chose not to sell Button's contract and instead loan him out to Benetton for 2 years. 2001 was a bad season for Button. An uncompetitive car, fell out with team principal Flavio Briatore over his lifestyle, labelling Button as a lazy playboy. He also suffered some back problems during the season, all accumulating to a measly 2 points. For 2002, Renault fully took over Benetton, and Button was looking to significantly change his image, altering his party lifestyle, training more, even inviting him to a ranch in Kenya for 10 days in order to improve his fitness and improve his back and shoulders. This would pay off, as not only was Button quicker, so was the Renault. He was set to score his first podium at the 2nd race in Malaysia until he suffered a rear suspension problem on the final lap. Throughout the season, Button would outperform his more experienced teammate Jarno Trulli, and yet even with his improving pace and character, Briatore chose to replace Button with a certain Fernando Alonso. Such a shame, considering Trulli and Briatore would fall out in 2004, and the fact Renault produced championship winning cars in 2005 and 6. There weren't many options for Button for the 2003 season, and so he struck a 2-year deal with BAR, a team created around 1997 champion Jacques Villeneuve, in which he would partner. Button still couldn't shake off his reputation of being a playboy. As Villeneuve said, and I quote, "He should be in a boy band." A great way to introduce your new teammate to the team. I can kind of see why he fell off now. BAR had struggled since its introduction to F1 in 1999. In 2003 it was kind of more of the same, with it ending up being Villeneuve's last year with the team as Button sent him packing. Quite a cool thing to do. Button was so good in 2003, showing that he was maturing into a good racer by wiping the floor with a world champion, finishing that year with 17 points, while Jack only managed 6. Now 2004 is where Honda began to have a lot of influence in the BAR team, and so in that year they produced a car that would regularly challenge for podiums. Finally, Button's chance to prove how good he was, now 24 years old. And other than Michael Schumacher, Jenson Button was the best driver in 2004. Although he didn't win any races, he was extremely consistent, and as George Russell said in 2019,
"As we know, in Formula 1, consistency is key."
he would claim his first podium of his F1 career in Malaysia, finishing 3rd. In the following race, he would claim his first pole position in Imola and finish 2nd behind the Red Baron. His consistency was seriously ridiculous as he took 10 podiums in 18 races and scored no points in 3, really proving that he was indeed the talent we were promised in 2000. He was the best of the rest in 2004 as he finished 3rd in the Drivers' Championship behind the 2 dominant Ferraris. His new teammate Takuma Sato managed 34 points, and so BAR Honda finished 2nd in the Constructors' Championship. There was a bit of a contract controversy during silly season, however, as Button actually chose to leave BAR and rejoin Williams on a 2-year contract, even though Williams had been kind of shit. But BAR insisted they had the right to exercise their option to retain Button. Maybe a slight rush of blood there. In 2005, Honda did see a drop off in performance, mainly due to their reliability, as Button failed to finish 5 of the opening 6 races. Other F1 teams like McLaren, Renault and Toyota overtook them. The team scored just 38 points, with Button getting 37 of them, once more showing his quality, especially in the second half of the season, where he had 10 consecutive points finishes, with a podium at the German Grand Prix. In 2006, Honda bought out BAR and returned to F1 as a works manufacturer for the first time since 1968. Takuma Sato was out and was replaced by Ferrari's Rubens Barrichello, a very worthy teammate / opponent for Button. 2006 would be the year Button would break his duck, winning his first Grand Prix in Hungary with one of his best drives. Starting in 14th, he moved his way up the grid, and with changing in conditions, this was Button's chance. Overtake after overtake, gliding past the Rainmaster himself. In no time, he had the race leader Fernando Alonso in his sight, but Alonso then suffered a technical failure, seeing him slide into the wall to gift Jenson the lead, and all he had to do was bring it home. This man had waited 6 years and 113 Grand Prix to stand on the top step, and you think being a Lando fan is hard. That's as good as it got for Button in 2006. He also beat Barrichello in the standings, clearly making a point of being the #1 driver at Honda, so you'd think they'd build on a very solid season for 2007. Well, there's only one word to describe the car Honda made for 2007: shit. It was like they were already tired of being at the front, so just reset back to being irrelevant. A car looking like that was never going to win a race, never mind a championship. Honda dropped from 4th in 2006 with 86 points to 8th in 2007 with just 6. Button still showing his class, however, as he scored all 6 points. In 2008, Button was turning 28. Most see that as the prime of a driver's career, and Button only had 1 win to show for it. There were positive signs for Honda as they brought in Ross Brawn as their technical director. Yeah, he'll become very important soon. Unfortunately, it was yet another disappointing season for Button, made even worse for him as he was outscored by his teammate for the first time since 2001, and you'd think it couldn't get any worse for him, but oh, it did. The world was struck by a global financial crisis in September of 2008, which resulted in Honda pulling out of F1 after the 2008 season. So if the team couldn't find a buyer, Button would be without a seat for 2009. At the age of 28, was F1 glory not destined for this very talented driver? But his career was saved by his technical director Ross Brawn, who bought the team for £1 in March of 2009, and what we witnessed may be the greatest story in F1 history. It turns out the Honda engineers were cooking up a storm when they designed the 2009 spec car, because Button and Brawn won 6 out of the first 7 races in 2009, mounting a genuine challenge as big teams like Ferrari and McLaren bottled the new regulations. There were new rivals in town as Red Bull and Brawn would battle it out at the front. After his 6th race win in Turkey, that would be his last win of the season, as the major teams began developing their cars and adding their own double diffusers. It was very difficult for Brawn to keep up with the development race as they had such a small budget, but that was no matter when at Brazil, Jenson raced a race that would enter him into F1 folklore as he started 14th and finished 5th in Brazil, a gutsy performance that prevented the title from being decided in the final race. He and Brawn had completed F1, becoming world champions of the 2009 season. Putting Button's title win in perspective to others, I'd say it's still very impressive. Although he had the complete advantage of the car in the first 7 races, he still had to outperform his experienced teammate, and when he didn't have the fastest car in the grid, pick up points anywhere he could with very mature driving, showing that he had truly matured into an excellent racer and very much deserved to win the championship. Button had the chance to re-sign for the 2010 season under Mercedes ownership, but he declined, instead opting for McLaren, partnering 2008 world champion Lewis Hamilton. This was the first time Button would be up against a world-class opponent in equal machinery, so many thought it would be interesting to see how the two Brits fared. Button had a flying start to his title defence as he won 2 of the opening 4 races in Australia and China respectively. And would you know, both races included variable weather conditions, something that Jenson loved more than his hate for Donica. Him and Hamilton then had a close fight for the lead at the Turkish Grand Prix after Vettel and Webber decided taking each other out was the only way to stop the other from outscoring themselves. Hamilton and Button nearly had a similar incident, but they were told to conserve fuel, which would be a big hint to hold their positions, meaning Hamilton won with Jenson coming second. The 2010 season would see 4 drivers go into the final race, still having the chance of winning the championship. Unfortunately, Jenson was not part of this 4 and narrowly missed out after being mathematically eliminated from retaining his title a race before the finale in Abu Dhabi. Both him and Hamilton would be beaten to the title by Red Bull's Sebastian Vettel, with Lewis just edging Button in the standings. The 2008 champion finishing the season with 240 points compared to Jenson's 214. The following 2 seasons would be very similar, as both men would win multiple races but not really mount a challenge for the championship. Jenson even had probably the greatest win of all time in the 2011 Canadian Grand Prix. Starting in 7th, Button had possibly the worst start to a race possible, colliding with teammate Hamilton on lap 8, pitting for what would be the first out of 6. He was then given a drive-through penalty for speeding behind the safety car, emerging in 15th place. On lap 37, he then collided with Alonso, pitting once again, re-emerging 21st and last. But this is Jenson Button we're talking about, and by the 44th lap was in 14th place. The track was also starting to dry, so Jenson was licking his lips. Button made more overtakes and took advantage of a free pit stop under the safety car, and was soon up to second, reeling in the race leader Sebastian Vettel. And on the final lap at turn 6, Vettel ran wide, handing Button the lead and the victory. One of the great wins converted by one of the best mixed condition drivers. He also won in Hungary and Japan that year, finishing the season as runner-up to Sebastian Vettel on 270 points, meaning he outscored and beat his world-class teammate for the first time. That alone shows the class of this man. The closest one to a dominant Vettel, and beating one of F1's greatest in equal machinery, the Nico Rosberg before Nico Rosberg. In 2012, McLaren would create a monster car. The only problem is that it didn't like to make the checkered flag very much and would often have reliability issues, meaning both Hamilton and Button weren't really in contention for the 2012 title. Button still won 2 races in 2012 however, another win at the season opener Down Under and a very classy win at Spa. Lewis Hamilton then decided to leave McLaren at the end of the year to join Mercedes, and so in their final season as teammates, who won? Well, Lewis did, but the margins were ridiculously close, as Hamilton only beat Jenson by 2 points in 2012. So over their 3 years as teammates, Hamilton was the far superior qualifier, out-qualifying Button 44 times to 14. Hamilton also won more races than Button, winning 10 to Jenson's 8. Button would have more podium finishes however, claiming 25 to Lewis's 22, and although Hamilton beat Button 2-1 in seasons, Button had more overall points in the 3-year period, scoring 672 compared to 657 by Hamilton. I'm not saying Button is better than Lewis Hamilton, but he was definitely not far away. Now sadly, after 2012, McLaren would produce some stinker cars and would be the beginning of their infamous decline. For 2013, Button was paired with Sergio Perez, who he didn't really see eye to eye with. It was a serious decline in the quality of machinery, as Jenson didn't even score a podium in 2013, so here came the big rule changes in 2014, and yet another teammate, this time a young Dane by the name of Kevin Magnussen. 2014 was slightly better, as Button actually got on the podium and was in the points on a lot more occasions. Moving on to 2015, this was a big year for McLaren. The signing of 2-time world champion Fernando Alonso was a bid to get back to the top, and a switch of engine suppliers from Mercedes to Honda, and I guess the rest is history. Jenson endured 2 seasons of this and ultimately hung up his gloves at the end of the 2016 season at the age of 36. Ugh, him and Alonso had so much fun together in those McLarens. It was pretty much even between the two though, sort of a good indicator of what could have happened if Button continued on with Renault all those years ago. Button beat Alonso in 2015 and Alonso got his revenge in 2016, if you wanted to know. He did however make a quite amusing cameo appearance in the 2017 Monaco Grand Prix, filling in for Fernando for a race as he tried to win IndyCar with another Honda engine.
You're joking. Not another one?
Jenson's Monaco Grand Prix ended when he went for a devilish overtake on Pascal Wehrlein at Poitiers, flipping the German in quite a comical accident, and so after that Jenson's career on the F1 track was over. He has since got into punditry, and every time F1 goes to America he has to put up with Danica Patrick. We feel for you, Jenson. We feel for you. But a man who was promised to be F1's next big thing that nearly didn't live up to expectations, as he was labelled a playboy and lazy, but there was always something there. Maturing in the mid-2000s and finally lived up to the hype by winning the 2009 championship. Some may say it was lucky timing, but all his career leading up to that, it was bad timing. So he got what he deserved in the end, and even competed toe-to-toe with world champions Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso at McLaren, showing that Jenson should be considered one of F1's greatest drivers of the 2000s and 2010s, an underrated legend.